This man was leisurely eating his breakfast, yet four bodies lie around him. He killed his wife and children. The tools of the trade were still in the sink. A few minutes ago, he shaved off his beard. He took off his brown contact lenses. In an instant, he was a different man. He slowly warmed up a slice of bread for himself and poured a cup of hot coffee after he'd had his fill. He left the scene of the crime. He's a psychopathic killer. He specializes in single women with children. Anyway, the child is not his own. It's easy to kill them. The police first identified him as a suspect, but they couldn't find any information about him. His identity is fake. A lot of fingerprints were left in the house, but there's no match in the fingerprint database. They couldn't even find a photo of him. We had to rely on a neighbor's word of mouth to draw a portrait. And on the other side, the man changed his name to David. He ran into Susan at the grocery store with her kids. Her son was upset with Susan. David intervened to resolve the conflict between them. Susan thanked him. She saw the wedding ring on his finger. She teased him about his lucky wife. David forced a smile on his face and said his wife and children had died. He wanted to get out of that sad place. He just came to live in this city. Susan came out of the supermarket. She ran into David again. Susan offered to take him to dinner. A few months later, the two of them were getting engaged. The eldest son, John, came back from school. He saw his mother laughing and talking with a strange man. He was repulsed. David was keenly aware of his emotions. He found a chance to talk to him alone. He learned that John loved swimming. The next day, he enrolled him in the best swimming lessons. It was easy to win John's favor. The family was happy. Everyone thought the stepfather was a great guy, but it was hard to hide the animal in him. One day, our youngest son was upstairs playing video games. Susan asked him to turn it down. The youngest son just ignored her. David went upstairs with a grim look on his face. He grabbed his youngest son by the neck. He grabbed the remote control and turned down the sound. The sudden violence stunned his son. This man likes to be a stepfather. He enjoys his family's happiness for a while. Then he kills his wife and child. Then he changed his identity to find his next target. This time, he had just established himself as a good man in his new home. He couldn't help but reveal his evil nature. He didn't realize his youngest son was a tattletale. In the evening, the family was having dinner. The children's real father arrived. He warned David in a rage not to touch his children. No one knew what was going on. John rushed to push the father out. The father told him that man was no good, but John thought it was because he wasn't happy with his mother's remarriage. He didn't take it personally, but the next day, an old neighbor lady came by. She told Susan that a murderer had been posted on the internet. Looked a lot like David. Susan just assumed the old lady had bad eyesight. She didn't take it seriously. She even told it to David as a joke. At this point, David was acting normal, but in the back of his mind, he was already determined to kill. He opened his computer and saw the wanted notice. Without saying a word, he went to the neighbor's house, pushed the old lady down the stairs, and disguised as an accidental death. The next day, Susan's best friend found David a job. It's in real estate sales, but he needed to fill in his identity information to get the job. David didn't dare to write it down. He went home and told Susan he didn't like the job. Susan didn't force him. That night, Susan wasn't home. Her real father came to the house again. David received him. He was being transferred to another job. He came to say goodbye to the children. He wanted David to treat the children well. As they talked, he remembered something. He heard that David graduated from the same university as him, but he hadn't heard anything about David at school. David was alerted to this. There was no way he was going to let him live through the night. The kids were upstairs playing a game. They were playing games so loud, they didn't hear anything. The boy thought something was wrong with his stepfather. Tonight, his real father said he was coming over, but when he called his father, he heard his cell phone ringing from the basement. He tried to go out to check, but his stepfather pretended to be answering the phone, and the neighbor's old lady was dead. John suddenly remembered what the old lady used to say. David looked like a wanted man. He immediately turned on his computer to check the wanted list, but he realized that the website had been opened before, and the picture on the wanted poster did look like David. Susan's best friend is also investigating. She thought it was suspicious that David wasn't at work. Susan couldn't get through on the phone, so she sent her an email. But David was on his computer at the time. He deleted the email and went to her best friend's house and drowned her in the water. John was on a date with his girlfriend that night, but the more he thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. He had to go home, even if it was raining, especially to check out the basement. He broke the glass and dove in. He saw his father's suitcase, and he found his father's body in the refrigerator. He was so scared, he almost died on the spot. His girlfriend told him to get out, but David heard the noise and came over. He knocked John's girlfriend out and dragged her home. He searched desperately for the murder weapon. He wanted to kill the family immediately. The loud noise woke Susan up. She was talking to David in a daze until She saw her son's girlfriend lying on the floor. Then she saw the knife in David's hand. Susan turned and ran upstairs. She was confronted by a man with a fierce face. Susan picked up a piece of broken glass and stabbed him. John came into the house at the same time. He picked up his girlfriend, who had fainted. Then he found his mother. When he saw David coming after him, John told his mother and girlfriend to hide in the attic while he fought with David, and they both fell out the window. By the time John woke up from his coma, 3 days had passed. David disappeared before the police arrived. In a mall in another city, he ran into another woman with a baby.